Good afternoon. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I mean, it's been a fantastic opportunity to learn and meet people, and particularly moving to Belgrade just for 2 weeks. This makes it even a more special occasion. I'm not sure if you have my presentation yet. All right. So does anybody know what this is? Any guesses? You know? Yes, that's the Napoleonic semaphore, right? So it was invented around 1880 in France, and it was actually the way that was the first time that humankind could send messages faster than horses, right? So the way that it worked is that you had like different towers, one relaying to one another. So you had a series of towers, and each tower corresponded to a letter. Now, people got very excited about this at the time. So you have here a quote by Alexander van der Monde, who was a luminary of the time, who says, "The invention of the telegraph is a new factor that Rousseau did not include in his calculations," right? Rousseau used to say that democracy at scale was very difficult, right? So he says, like, it can be used at great distances as fluently and as distinctly as in a room. There is no reason why it would not be possible for all the citizens of France to communicate their will within a rather short time in such a way that this communication can be considered instantaneous. And there's something else. What is interesting is that at the time, for security purposes, this code was secret. So only if you were in government, you could know this code. So van der Monde and others, they would say, well, we just need to open up this code so everybody can use, so that democracy will flourish. So it was actually the first tech for democracy, an open source movement in history that you could find, right? But what happened? Well, it didn't live up to its democratic expectations. Actually, one of the most creative uses for the telegraph at the time was precisely for fraud in stock markets. So people would communicate to others where people were kind of like putting their money, and they would do fraud of that. So I think you're getting the moral of this story, right? Fast forward 200 years, we're excited about democracy, and all seems to go down like pretty bad, right? So working on digital democracy, I started to look at a specific area which is called civic tech, right? What we're calling about civic tech are technologies that are specifically designed to promote participation and hopefully to promote government's response. What is the model of civic tech? Very simple model here is Fix My Street. It's kind of like very well known in the UK. So essentially you report problems in your city, and government supposedly fixes it. So if you live anywhere in the UK, you can go and you put like your zip code, and the government goes and they send a message to government, the platform sends to all the councils, and government is supposed to fix it, right? But that brings to a question to us, which is, first of all, do governments respond, right? If you send something, do governments respond? And the second question, and it's the one that I want to focus here, is when governments respond, who do they respond to? So on Fix My Street, we got all the data from Fix My Street. At the time, it was about like 500,000 reports that we got. And we wanted to see what were the predictors of government responsiveness. And by type of message, what makes government respond? So first of all, which is very British, if you say please, government's more likely to respond. If you put a photo, government's more likely to respond. But here comes a problem. If you sign as a man, government is also more likely to respond. And this is not just one. You need to understand that this is every UK government in the UK. This is the aggregate results of that, right? Length doesn't matter. So this is what we came to call the polite male with a camera effect. Because if you're kind of like a man and you take a picture and you say, please, government is going to respond to you. So next case, change.org, largest e-petitions platform around the globe. We got access to their API. They were a bit distracted at the time. They didn't know we could download all the data, and we did. And we wanted to see also predictors of government responsiveness. Again, we looked at series of things, and we also could look at participation. Normally, men participate more than women in politics, but when it comes to e-petition, we could see that female participation was higher. But then it brings another distinction in political participation, which you call thin versus thick participation. Thin participation is easy for you to, for instance, to sign a petition. A thicker form of participation is when you, for example, you create a petition. Then what we found is that actually women signed more petition, but men created more petition. So do you have a problem here that maybe men are doing the agenda setting and women are signing those petitions, right? So you'd have like another type of gender bias. Now, mobilization is the strongest predictor of success on change.org, not surprising. More people sign a petition, more likely government is to respond. And women mobilize more signatures than men, right? And the other thing is that women, they have different preferences than men when you look at the subject of the data. Now, what we found is that women create fewer petitions than men, but they're more successful at it. So women-created petitions are 1.4 times as likely to be successful as male-created petitions. Now, why am I looking at this? And why are we looking at this? I mean, I have a team who works with this, and this is not just my work, is that I think we need to understand responsiveness. If you want digital democracy to come where it is, we need to understand what makes government tick, right? It's what I like to call nudging the nudgers. We talk lots about governments nudging people. Maybe we should be thinking how we could nudge governments to respond, right? So to give an example, this is a state in Russia. City had lots of potholes, right? So there was this artist that started to come and put graffiti around with a picture of the face of the governor. This is the governor of that state, right? Government was very responsive, but not in the way that you would expect, right? So, but what I think is important here is that we really start to understand what makes government tick and maybe start nudging them. So going back to the case of Fix My Street, right? Why do local governments respond? For example, here, maybe government take action based on their access to information. I know about it, I solve it. But maybe it's because there's a naming and shaming effect, right? It's a public report. If I don't close that thing, it becomes visible that I'm not answering, I'm not fixing the pothole, for example. And maybe governments take action for both of the reasons above. The thing is that we don't know, and we can do lots of experiments to understand that and to be understanding how governments can do better. So instead of concluding, I answer with a question, right? How can we leverage technology for better government responsiveness? Because if we don't do that, the fate of all our hopes around digital democracy won't be very different of the Napoleonic telegraph. Thank you very much.